Hey adventurers! So today is one of the videos that we're going to be doing at the end of the year every year, hopefully. And that is our top 5 favorite series. Who knows how much will change. And right now I'm not sure that this is entirely accurate, but this is what we could remember. So we'll get right into it.
One thing I know for certain for me is I haven't read in completion a lot of series, and I do find that I tend to like standalone books better. I just seem to enjoy them, or I'll enjoy book 1 in the series and then it kind of lets me down. So I am interested to see how this develops as I get more series read and all that.
Yeah. Alright. So my first, I'm not going to start from number 1, from my top favorite series. Although I don't know why not. We all know what it is. Alright, so my top favorite series, as you've probably guessed, is Lord of the Rings, which technically Lord of the Rings, I don't consider it a series, I consider it one book. So that when I say Lord of the Rings, I'm including The Hobbit and the Silmarillion and all the other Tolkien books like The Children of Hurin and Unfinished Tales and the Fall of Gondolin and stuff like that. So there's a bunch of other ones that I consider to be part of this series, whether I've read them or not. But still, this is my top favorite series.
I don't know if I have a top favorite series, but one of my favorite series growing up as a child was the Boxcar Children series, up to book 19, which is what the original author wrote. After that, they I think they digressed a little bit, in my opinion. There's so many memories. They're not even that great of stories, but I loved them to death. I loved the characters, and yeah, I was obsessed with the Boxcar Children.
So, my probably second favorite series, I'd go so far as to say that, is the Redwall series. I've talked about it a fair amount. We've read one book for this channel, yeah. Which I need to do more. I'm thinking I probably will just do them without Kate.
Thank you.
So this series, if you haven't heard of it already and if you haven't seen one of our other videos talking about it, it's a high fantasy series following animals. There's, to the best of my knowledge, I don't think any humans in the world. I've never seen one and I've never seen reference to one. So it's exclusively animals, and Redwall itself follows a mouse named Matthias, who basically has to defend Redwall, which is a abbey. Basically, it's just a city where all the Redwall creatures dwell. Each book basically follows a specific character somewhere in the world, and they have to defend or help protect Redwall. Or there's a whole bunch of plots that they all have to complete, basically. I don't know. I'm not very great at describing series at the moment. But it's a super fun series. It's not the most difficult series. It's written as young adult or maybe even middle grade. And it's just a fun series. Kate doesn't care for it because she doesn't like talking animals. But I have no issue with it, and I've never had any issue with it. But it's been one of my favorite series for as long as I can remember.
The books do tend to be more standalone, don't they?
Yes,
the series?
Yes, they do. There's a couple that are directly sequels. So the direct sequel to Redwall is Madameo, which is about Matthias's son. There's a couple of them like that, and yeah, it's not terribly high stakes for the most part, but they're just fun books that have a lot of heart and a lot of good themes in them.
One of my top favorite series is the Hunger Games series. This is another one of those book series that's so far from perfect, but it really set well with me, and I do enjoy it in the long run. And it's one that I'm very likely to read over several times. If you don't already know, this is written by Suzanne Collins. It's a trilogy, and it's a dystopian world. And you know the plot of dystopian books. There's a restrictive government that we see in detail, and we see this perverted, or sickness of it maybe, would be a better word. And there's usually some sort of rebellion in it, so.
Do you think that Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes added to the series as a whole? Or
I don't consider it part of the series. It's a prequel, so maybe by technicality it is, but
Okay.
Personally, I don't consider, when I say I like the Hunger Games series, that's not part of the Hunger Games series. Part of the world. But it's kind of like Silmarillion to Lord of the Rings, which I know you say Lord of the Rings isn't a series, but
Lord of the Rings itself is one book.
Right.
But especially if you add The Hobbit, that's the direct prequel. It comes directly before, well, 50 years before. 80 years before, I guess. Yeah, 80 years before. But still, this next series, I was struggling to decide between Mistborn and Stormlight, but ultimately I decided on Stormlight Archives because I own it. I don't technically own Mistborn, so I can't say that one. I have a lot of respect for this series, especially after having read Oathbringer and am very, 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 very slowly starting to read Rhythm of War. This is a high fantasy series, of course, written by Brandon Sanderson, and it's supposed to be a 10-book series, and it follows, for the most part, it follows 4 to 5 characters, especially each book, but overall there's 4 or 5 main characters throughout at least these first 5-book series. And it's kind of hard to describe without spoilers, but this first book, yeah, that's good enough summary.
Another one of my favorite childhood book series was the Little House on the Prairie series. I know I've talked about these before, but I've read and reread these books a lot, and I don't have the first one. My sister had it, so I read her copy a lot, but I really love that series. It's historical fiction, I guess you could say. I'm trying to think of how to describe it.
Well,
I mean, it's pretty well known.
Written by herself of herself, or is it a fictionalized version of her?
It's a autobiography to an extent. There's some liberties taken with it, but creative type liberties, things left out, which is understandable in an autobiography. But
the next series that I am going to have on this list is the Guardians of Gokula series. This is a series that I don't own. I think I've read the entire series, or maybe a couple books in the offshoot series that I haven't read. But I actually really loved this series. It was another talking animal series. It was about owls. Owls, if you know me, I'm a huge, I love birds. Birds are massive, I know, but for like Kate or my other family,
our only viewers.
They know that they know that I love birds, and owls are probably my favorite bird species. And so the series that's about owls is just really, really cool to me and really fun. So like I said, it's about owls. It's a fantasy series as well. And it takes place, so Gokula is a tree in the center of an island in the center of a lake. Or ocean, sea, that's what it is. Anyway, so they're basically like, it's very similar to Redwall in that sense, where they have a specific place that they call home, but then they go out from there and have adventures from there, and it's pretty interesting. It's not for everyone. It's definitely, I would say, a middle grade series, but I just really enjoyed it, and I don't think I would never not enjoy it.
So the next book series that I have is Percy Jackson and the Heroes of Olympus. I don't own book 1. This is book 4 in the series, but I really, really did enjoy these. I've recently read Percy Jackson and the Olympians, and it was good, but I'd forgotten how young it was for, and I remember loving these, and they were also written for a little bit older age range, still young adult.
Yeah.
Even still middle grade, I think, in a lot of ways. And it's not a perfect series like before. There's things in it I don't like, but I do really like them overall. I really love this series. It's a lot of fun. And there's a book where we have some scenes set in Alaska, so that's fun for me.
Yeah, it's true. So the last series that I actually have 2 series written down, but I just grabbed one of them, and it's definitely childhood. Maybe you could say middle grade, but it's younger than middle grade.
This is guilty pleasure read, guys.
Anyways, this is the Magic Treehouse series. I have not read every single one of the books in this series. There's well over 100 books in the series. I mean, this book is 68 pages long, so it's not like it's hard series to read or get through. But it's it's a series that I loved when I was a kid. Again, it's fantasy, but this time it's actually low fantasy. Whereas all my other series have been high fantasy. But this series is about Jack and Annie, who are brother and sister, and they, this is very interesting. There's some very blatant parallels between you and me.
I know, no wonder we loved it.
Anyways, so they find a magic treehouse in the woods, and there's books in it, and they open a book, and they're like, oh, we want to go here, and so they go there. Don't.
And the treehouse started to spin, and it spun faster and faster.
Then everything was still.
Absolutely still.
Anyways, but so they go on these adventures, they look in the books, and they get basically transported to that location and time.
Yeah.
And they go on adventures in those places. Sometimes they're collecting objects, sometimes there's a whole bunch of different things that they do.
Sometimes they have missions, and sometimes it's more of just an experience type of situation.
But it's kind of related to Arthurian legend, Arthurian? I don't know, Arthurian or Arthurial, whatever. I think it's Arthurian legends, where Morgana Le Fay, or Morgan Le Fay, I think is what it is in this series, basically was the creator of this treehouse. And so they end up meeting Morgan Le Fay a couple times, and it's just a really cool series.
This is actually, like, in contrast to my Young series, this is actually a really, really good one. I mean, really well written for the age range and whatnot.
I don't know how well written they are anymore because it's been a long time since I read them, but they were just so much fun.
The world was really cool.
And yeah, it was such an interesting world, the way that it was developed and created and designed, and like, I would probably go through and reread the entire series if I could. But yeah.
I think what was really fun, I loved this series too growing up, and it was really fun for us because it was one of the only ones that we read as they were coming out.
Yeah.
The books were being published. One of the only series we really followed like that. So, you know, it was always exciting to go into Barnes & Noble and find the new Magic Treehouse mystery book.
Yeah. I don't know if they're technically mysteries, but they're fun.
Yeah, sorry, they're not necessarily mysteries.
That's my last series on this list.
Harry Potter is the last of my favorite series on this list. Like I said before, these aren't in order of what I liked best. They're just kind of scrambled for me. But I read Harry Potter at the end of 2019, beginning of 2020, in completion for the first time, and I loved it. It was a lot of fun for me, and even though it's just like everything else, it's not perfect, but overall the series really won me over.
Yeah, there's a lot of great things about Harry Potter.
If you don't know Harry Potter, it's a little fantasy.
Yeah.
About Harry Potter.
If you don't know it, that's okay, but it's worth a read if you haven't.
Yeah.
It's not as important to culture as Lord of the Rings, which Kate hasn't read, but it's still very good. Alright, well, after filming for a lot longer than we should have, even though this video hopefully won't be as long as we filmed, we are now done with it. Thanks for watching. We hope you enjoyed it. Let us know in the comments down below what your top 5 favorite series are, or if you've read and enjoyed any of these series that we've talked about. Thanks for watching, guys. Stay well.